That after the Bible, no other ancient Near Eastern text has been as influential on the modern world as Gilgamesh has. 2,500 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, Emperor Gilgamesh of Uruk became the main character in the great epic Gilgamesh. Not so far, scientists found DNA in the tomb believed to be Gilgamesh's. This discovery can completely change our thinking about the image of the giant that influenced the flow of history. Join us today when we reveal things about Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh's tomb was found. DNA of giant is revealing to the world. In the history of mankind, there are many legends and myths about prehistoric giants, such as the Anunnaki and Sumerian civilization. The Sumerian civilization was one of the earliest, arising around the 4th millennium BC in what is now southern Iraq. The Sumerians left behind many inscriptions and cuneiform records of their history, culture, religion, and culture, and science, including notes on human origins and mythology. According to Sumerian records, the Anunnaki are a type of advanced creatures from extraterrestrials who came to our planet to find gold and repair their planet, as well as create humans to help them mine gold. Over time, the Anunnaki took humans as their wives, giving birth to hybrid children like Gilgamesh. This king is different from ordinary people, 5 meters tall, possessing infinite strength and extraordinary intelligence. He once ruled Uruk, the largest and richest city in the Sumerian civilization. These stories sound absurd to humanity's modern knowledge. However, the discovery of an ancient cemetery proved that Gilgamesh may have actually existed. Archaeologists in Iraq reportedly believe that they may have discovered the lost tomb of Gilgamesh, ruler of the ancient Sumerian city of Uruk, and the subject of the oldest recorded story in history. A Germana-led expedition reported that it had discovered what was thought to be the entire city of Uruk, including the last resting place of its famous king, where it would have been surrounded by the waters of the Euphrates. Before the river changed its course, it looks very similar to that described in the epic. The fragments of the epic poem of Gilgamesh were also discovered in the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia. The tablets on which the poem were written date only a few hundred years after the invention of writing, a discovery that fundamentally changed human culture. The 4-letter alphabet of DNA contains the possibilities of life in all its aspects. In both cases, scholars and scientists agree. Transcripts provided by Transcription Outsourcing, LLC, through the mapping of the human genome and the discoveries we shall make of the secrets of individual genes, we learn about the myriad individual components that create a gestalt of human life. Through gene therapy and other advances in biotechnology, we are told man will someday overcome aging and possibly transcend death. Through the story of Gilgamesh, we learn that man has always tried to circumvent death. The greatest king of his time, 2/3 divine, 1/3 man, travels to the limits of the underworld to learn how to overcome mortality. He learns that nothing is permanent. Upon returning to his kingdom of Uruk, all Gilgamesh can do is praise the strength of the city's walls. Today, not one person in a million could identify Uruk on a map, nor do those city walls stand. Scientists today question whether that process is necessary and whether it can at least be slowed. The mission of translating the genetic language and making genes into manipulable objects may accomplish Gilgamesh's quest 5,000 years later. Was giant Gilgamesh found intact in his tomb after the Euphrates River dried up? In the story, which is recorded on a set of inscribed clay tablets, Gilgamesh is described as having been buried under the Euphrates in a tomb that was constructed when the waters of the ancient river parted following his death. The archaeological team found just outside the city, an area in the middle of the former Euphrates River, the remains of such a building which could be interpreted as a burial. The amazing discovery of the ancient city under the Iraqi desert had been made possible by modern technology, by reading differences in the magnetization in the soil. You can look into the ground. The difference between mud bricks and sediments in the Euphrates provides a very detailed structure. The most surprising thing was that they found structures that had already been described in the Gilgamesh epic. They covered more than 100 hectares. We have found garden structures and field structures as described in the epic, and we found Babylonian houses. But they added that the most astonishing find was an incredibly sophisticated system of canals. They can see in the canals some structures showing that flooding destroyed some of the houses, which means that a highly developed system existed here. It was like a Venice in the desert. In the years following groundbreaking work deciphering the Epic of Gilgamesh, the scholarly and archaeological world buzzed with questions about the real-life existence of this mythic king. The next logical step was to look for material evidence that could confirm or disprove the historicity of Gilgamesh. And where else to begin this quest but by searching for his tomb? According to the text itself, Gilgamesh was laid to rest somewhere in the city of Uruk, close to the Euphrates River, a location with biblical importance as well. The city of Uruk holds a significant position not just in Mesopotamian history but also in the Bible. Situated close to the Euphrates River, this ancient city is one of the oldest known human settlements. The Euphrates River is not only one of the great rivers of ancient Mesopotamia, but also holds a significant place in the scriptures, especially in the book of Genesis, where it is one of the 4 rivers flowing out of Eden. Thus, the geographical proximity of Uruk to the Euphrates isn't just a matter of Mesopotamian history, but has potential theological implications, providing a tangible link between the Bible and the wider ancient Near Eastern world. The search for Gilgamesh's tomb was fraught with challenges. Uruk had been inhabited for thousands of years, which meant that several layers of human history lay stacked atop one another. Identifying the layer that could correspond to the time of Gilgamesh was itself a monumental task. Moreover, excavators had to wrestle with the problem of differentiating between myth and history. Would they find a tomb that matched the grand descriptions in the epic? Or would it be more modest, befitting a historical figure rather than a mythical one? As a conservative Bible archaeologist, it's crucial to interpret these discoveries cautiously. The mere fact that a city like Uruk existed and its close proximity to the Euphrates River offers us fascinating avenues to explore for cross-cultural and cross-religious comparisons. However, this should be conducted while respecting the uniqueness and authority of Scripture. The Bible makes several mentions of regions and cities that are geographically close to Uruk and the Euphrates. For instance, Babylon, another city by the river, plays a major role in biblical history. Understanding the geography, culture, and historical context of these cities could potentially offer new insights into the biblical narrative. Moreover, it's not entirely inconceivable that the Hebrew scribes could have been aware of the Gilgamesh epic, given the trade and diplomatic relations among ancient Near Eastern nations. How looting in Iraq unearthed the treasures of Gilgamesh. You would think that in conflict in the Middle East, the destruction of archaeological sites hardly counts for much. But the smashing of the Mosul Museum by the self-styled Islamic State, and their blowing up of a succession of high-profile ancient cities, Nimrud and Hotra in Iraq, Palmyra in Syria, have grabbed more media attention. There is something about the deliberate annihilation of cultural heritage that strikes a deep blow against the identity of human beings, collective and individual. When a madman attacked Michelangelo's Pieta at the Vatican in 1972 and broke off the Virgin Mary's arm, public outrage far exceeded the offense taken at the mass amputation of living hands. In repressive Middle Eastern courts of law, ancient works of art and historical monuments symbolize the endurance of human achievements. Perhaps that is why their loss seems to some more shocking than the destruction of lives that only briefly inhabit time and space. The destruction of cultural heritage in the Middle East is not an innovation of the Islamic State. Since Saddam Hussein lost control of southern Iraq after his army's expulsion from Kuwait in 1991, there has been a concerted effort to loot dozens of archaeological sites in what is the cradle of urban civilization. The harsh conditions of life. First under international sanctions, and then during the breakup of the Iraqi state since 2003, encouraged local people to seek treasure in the ground beneath their feet. The illegal trade in Mesopotamian antiquities that was viciously repressed by the Ba'ath government sprang back to life and continues to this day. It has brought onto the market many thousands of small objects. Their exact archaeological provenance can only be guessed at, and they are now dispersed among museums and private collections worldwide. For archaeologists, the destruction of ancient sites by looting is just as terrible to learn of as the smashing of sculpture in Mosul and the detonation of high explosives in Palmyra. But it is not all bad news. Out of the destruction and looting, and partly because of it, emerged striking gains in knowledge of our oldest literary inheritance. Among the objects that passed through the antiquities markets in the past over 25 years are large numbers of clay tablets inscribed in cuneiform. These are documents that bear witness to every aspect of life in ancient Mesopotamia, public, political, religious, spiritual, literary, legal, economic, and administrative, across 3,000 years of ancient history. Because cuneiform tablets contain written text, their writing, spelling, and content often reveal how old they are and where they come from. Assyriologists, historians of Mesopotamia, used them to reconstruct in astonishing detail the history, culture, and science of the Near East before Alexander the Great. The recovery since the 1860s of the written culture of ancient Mesopotamia has been one of the least noticed. But most noteworthy feats of scholarship of modern times, the world's most ancient literatures, 4,000 years old and lost for nearly half that time, are now in the process of recovery from broken cuneiform tablets scattered around the world. From the very beginning, one text above all others emerged as the finest representative of this literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In 2011, Farouk al-Rawi, an Iraqi Assyriologist now living in Britain, was shown a group of cuneiform tablets by an antiquities dealer in the Kurdish part of Iraq. He spotted among them a large, unusually shaped fragment and urged the Suleymaniye Museum to acquire the whole group. Sitting down to clean the strange piece and embark on deciphering its text, he realized that he was looking at a piece of the Epic of Gilgamesh. In November 2012, he spent 4 days establishing a definitive decipherment, and the results were published in the Journal of Cuneiform Studies years later. The Epic of Gilgamesh asserts the endurance of civilized values in the face of barbarity. It is an ancient monument like Nimrud, Hatra, and Palmyra, but its substance is words and ideas, and so it cannot be destroyed like material things, and it is not yet complete. More tablets like the one in Suleymaniye will come to the surface, either on the market or through regular excavations. Then, on some distant future day, we will have finally reconstructed this most majestic Babylonian poem. All that is needed is committed Assyriologists, and the will of liberal society to sustain and perpetuate this tiny academic field that still has so much to teach about our human condition. The United States returns to a rock-rare tablet bearing portion of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The United States has returned to the Republic of Iraq a rock cuneiform tablet bearing a portion of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a Sumerian poem considered one of the world's oldest works of literature. The repatriation ceremony was held at the Smithsonian Institution's Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. Known as the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet, the artifact originated in the area of modern-day Iraq and entered the United States contrary to federal law. An international auction house later sold the tablet to Hobby Lobby Stores, Inc., an arts and crafts retailer based in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, for display at the Museum of the Bible. Under a judicially authorized seizure warrant, law enforcement agents seized the tablet from the museum in September 2019. Acting Executive Associate Director of the Department of Homeland Security Investigations, and Iraq's ambassador to the United States, Farid Yassin, signed a ceremonial certificate transferring ownership of the artifact from the United States to Iraq. Many senior officials also participated in the repatriation ceremony. Returning the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet to the Republic of Iraq is a message to the people of Iraq and to the world that the United States government will take action to seize and repatriate antiquities and other significant items of cultural heritage that have been unlawfully brought into the United States. Today, Iraq is reclaiming a piece of its cultural history. For HI New York's Cultural Property, Arts and Antiquity Investigations Program will continue to work tirelessly to interrupt the criminal activities of those who loot antiquities and seek to profit off the theft of a country's rich history. As alleged in the government's amended complaint in 2003, a U.S. antiquities dealer purchased the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet encrusted with dirt and unreadable from a family member of a coin dealer in London. The antiquities dealer and a U.S. cuneiform expert shipped the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet to the United States without declaring formal entry. After it was imported and cleaned, experts in cuneiform recognized it as bearing a portion of the Gilgamesh epic in which the protagonist describes his dreams to his mother. The protagonist's mother interprets the dreams as foretelling the arrival of a new friend. She tells her son, "You will see him and your heart will laugh." The names of the hero Gilgamesh and the character who becomes his friend Enkidu are replaced in the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet with the names of deities Sin and Ea. The Gilgamesh Dream Tablet measures approximately 6 inches by 5 inches and is written in the Akkadian language, which was spoken in ancient Mesopotamia. In 2007, the antiquities dealer sold the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet with a false provenance letter that stated that the tablet had been among miscellaneous ancient bronze fragments purchased in a 1981 auction. This false letter traveled with the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet as it was sold several times in different countries. and a later owner provided the letter to the auction house in London. In 2014, the auction house sold the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet to Hobby Lobby in a private sale, and an auction house employee carried it on a flight from London to the United States and then transferred it to New York. Hobby Lobby consented to the tablet's forfeiture based on the tablet's illegal importation into the United States in 2014. Is Gilgamesh really exist? Let's take a quick look at this giant through the Epic of Gilgamesh. When the Epic of Gilgamesh was first translated in 1876, including the story of the Great Flood and predating the biblical tale of Noah and his ark, the understanding of world history was forever changed as the culture of ancient Mesopotamia came to light. Further expeditions unearthed more cuneiform tablets, and among them, the death of Gilgamesh, discovered in the ruins of the ancient cities of Nippur and Michuran, modern-day Tel Haddad, Iraq, between 1899-00. The precise date of composition is unknown, but the poem is understood to have informed later works, and famously the Epic of Gilgamesh, in its focus on the brevity of life and certainty of death. The prologue of the epic declares that Gilgamesh, the ancient, took a long journey and brought back the story of the flood. Descended from the gods, he gave the city strong walls and built magnificent temples. As a young man, Gilgamesh grows arrogant, so the gods create Enkidu to challenge him. Enkidu is a wild man living among animals until he is seduced by a prostitute who lures him to civilization. He then lives with the shepherds and defends the flocks. Gilgamesh begins to have dreams about the coming of Enkidu, and his mother interprets them to mean that the gods are sending a friend. Enkidu travels to the city to confront Gilgamesh's tyranny. Enkidu loses the fight, but immediately becomes Gilgamesh's best friend. Gilgamesh has a dream and is sad because it relates that he can never be immortal. Meanwhile, Enkidu is growing tired of city life. The two friends decide to go and fight Humbaba, the giant who protects the sacred cedar forest. They ask for and gain the sun god Shamash's protection. After a long journey, they lure the giant out of the forest by chopping down one of his trees. They fight, defeat him, and take cedars from the forest. However, by killing Humbaba, they anger the god Enlil. After the defeat of Humbaba, the goddess Ishtar proposes to Gilgamesh, but he rejects and mocks her. When she tells the other gods of his arrogant behavior, they release the bull of heaven to punish Gilgamesh. Enkidu and Gilgamesh, however, kill the bull. While they're celebrating, Ishtar appears and they mock her again. The gods then curse Enkidu with a mysterious illness. After several weeks, he dies, and Gilgamesh and the whole city of Uruk grieve for the great hero. Frightened by Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh goes on a quest to find the secret of immortality. He passes through the gate of the scorpion men and travels through total darkness. He emerges in the land of the gods, where Shamash warns him not to cross the sea. Gilgamesh refuses to turn back. At the seaside, he meets Siduri, the goddess of wine, who tells him to live in the present and to stop seeking immortality. But Gilgamesh goes on. He finds the ferryman Urshbabi and begins his journey across the sea to the home of Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh the story of the flood and how he himself gained immortality. The god Ea warned him that Enlil was sending a flood to wipe out humanity and instructs Utpishtim how to build a boat to survive the flood. Utnapishtim takes his family, servants, and animals on the boat. The storm begins, the gods of the dead rise from the abyss, and most human life is wiped out as the other gods mourn. After Utnapishtim and his wife survive the flood, Enlil makes them immortal and makes them the guardians of the rivers. Utnapishtim explains that to become immortal, Gilgamesh must make the gods feel sorry for him. However, Gilgamesh fails the challenge to accomplish this. Utnapishtim then banishes Gilgamesh from the land of the gods and similarly banishes Urshanabi for bringing a mortal across the sea. Utnapishtim's wife feels sorry for Gilgamesh and helps Gilgamesh learn how to find a plant that grants eternal youth. Gilgamesh finds the plant, but later a serpent steals it. Urshanabi and Gilgamesh return to Uruk, where Gilgamesh describes the glories of his city. After his death, Gilgamesh is remembered for building the city's walls and temple, and for bringing back the story of the flood. Gilgamesh has fulfilled the destiny Enlil gave him. He became a great king who did not oppress his people, and is remembered for all time because of the city he built and the journey that he made and recorded on tablets. When he dies, his family and his people mourn him. They make offerings to the gods on his behalf and the offerings read Gilgamesh in his tomb. As what I told before, on an area of more than 100 hectares excavated, the research team has identified garden structures, fields, and even houses of the Babylonians, true to the description in the heroic story of Gilgamesh. A statue of Gilgamesh was unearthed in the tomb. What's special is that this statue wears a watch-like object in its hand and holds an adult lion. This evidence suggests that this may have been where Gilgamesh ruled and that he may have actually existed. According to Sumerian records, Gilgamesh was the 5th king of Uruk recorded in the Sumerian king list. He is considered the son of Lugurbanda and the goddess Ningsong. Gilgamesh is also known as the king of heroes because his strength and courage surpassed those of ordinary people. Gilgamesh is described as possessing 2/3 of God's blood and 1/3 of human blood, meaning he has the wisdom and power of the gods, but without their longevity. Gilgamesh ruled brutally, forcing his people into slavery. So the people called on the gods for help, and the gods created Enkidu, a wild man to confront and stop Gilgamesh's brutality. Enkidu goes to Uruk and has a fierce fight with Gilgamesh, which ultimately results in the two becoming friends regardless of the outcome. If such is true, the tomb is not only an archaeological discovery, but could also change knowledge about the history of the world and origins of humanity. According to records of Sumerian civilization, Anunnaki are a type of advanced creatures from aliens. If these stories are true, then humans are not the product of natural evolution, but the result of alien experimentation. Gilgamesh may have had strength and intelligence superior to humans, may have found the secret to living forever, and even mastered advanced technology. This makes everyone curious and eager to explore. Unfortunately, not long after archaeologists discovered this tomb, war broke out again in the Middle East. The area has been cordoned off, preventing local residents and reporters from accessing. Therefore, the mystery of this area has not yet been decoded, and everything is a hypothesis that has not been scientifically verified. Is Gilgamesh a giant man mentioned in the Bible? In scholarly circles, Gilgamesh is not merely a character out of Mesopotamian mythology. The tales and epics revolving around him serve as important historical documents that provide insights into ancient Mesopotamian culture, religion, and social norms. But the issue at hand is not merely about understanding Mesopotamian history. It also touches on the much grander issue of the validity and reliability of the Bible. While the Epic of Gilgamesh primarily falls under the realm of mythology, the historical and geographical settings it presents cannot be ignored. The city of Uruk, for instance, is a well-documented archaeological site. If Gilgamesh did exist, it would stand to reason that he would have lived during a period consistent with the setting and circumstances described in the epic. The question of his historicity is, therefore, not entirely implausible. If Gilgamesh was indeed a real historical individual, could his story somehow align with or be explained by biblical narratives? For instance, was he a post-flood giant distinct from the Nephilim who were whipped out in the global Deluide described in the book of Genesis? Or could he have been one of the mighty men mentioned in Genesis 10 who emerged after the flood? The Bible does not shy away from discussing giants. After the flood, we encounter mentions of extraordinarily tall individuals or groups like Goliath and the Anakim. They were not Nephilim, the progeny of fallen angels and human women, because the Nephilim were destroyed in the flood. Therefore, any post-flood giants must be considered distinct from them. Exploring the possibility of Gilgamesh being one of these post-flood giants would affirm the historical reliability of the biblical text.